It was a windless morning on the Oregon coast when a woman clipped leashes to 3 excited dogs and stepped barefoot onto the pale sand for their usual sunrise walk. She waved to a neighbor watering their porch flowers and laughed as one of the dogs dragged a stick twice its size toward the surf. Within the hour, all 3 leashes would be found tangled near a driftwood log. No sign of the woman, despite weeks of grid searches, sonar sweeps, and tireless flyers. The case went cold like the tide slipping back to sea. 2 years passed. Then one of the dogs showed up on a stranger's porch, in a different state, starved, shaking, and still wearing its original collar. What it led investigators to, no one was prepared for. The kettle clicked off just as the sun peeked through the kitchen blinds, painting soft gold lines across the tile. Ela Carmichael poured hot water over her tea bag, the kind with the string quotes she never read anymore, and walked barefoot to the living room. Her father's old Labrador, Murphy, was already curled into the corner of the couch, stiff legs stretched out like old timber. She checked the time, 6:42 a.m. early for a Sunday, but not unusual. Since the news broke, her phone was already buzzing on the kitchen counter. Another reporter. She let it go to voicemail. It had been 723 days since Mariah disappeared. Ela had counted, first on a small wall calendar, then in journals, then in the quiet part of her own mind where no one else went. Her sister's sudden vanishing had rearranged the Carmichael family like a fire burning through a photo album. Nothing made sense in the same way anymore. She still remembered that day, August 19, 2021. Mariah had come by early with her dogs, Scout, Poppy, and Kona, wanting to borrow the collapsible water bowl Ela kept by the door. "We're doing the full loop today," she'd said, cheerful, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Might even beat the fog. It was supposed to be a regular coastal morning walk. Scout was a shepherd mix who barked at every falling leaf. Poppy, the terrier, had a limp that made her shuffle sideways sometimes when she got excited. And Kona, Kona was the glue of the trio. Big, brown-eyed mutt with a streak of independence no fence could hold. Ela had watched her sister cross the dunes with the dogs trailing behind, Mariah's long ponytail swinging as she walked. That was the last image. Golden light, barking laughter, sand between toes. By 11 a.m., someone walking the trail found 2 of the dogs wandering aimlessly near the bluffs. Scout and Poppy were panicked, tangled in each other's leashes. Kona was gone. Mariah was gone. Her sandals were found half buried in wet sand near a large driftwood pile. No signs of a struggle, no personal items, no phone, nothing. Search and rescue teams were mobilized within hours. Helicopters swept the cliffs. Cadaver dogs sniffed out every trailhead. Divers scoured the coastal inlets where rogue waves might have pulled her under. But there was no evidence of foul play, and no evidence of anything else. By week 2, Ela stopped hoping for a call. By month 6, the vigils became less attended, and when the first anniversary passed, only family showed up. What haunted her wasn't just the not knowing. It was the stillness. Mariah's story didn't end. It just stopped mid-sentence. That's why, when Isla's phone rang again 3 mornings ago, and a tired voice said, "We believe we've found one of your sister's dogs," she didn't believe it. Couldn't, not after this long. But then they sent the photo, and there was Kona. Matted, skin stretched tight over bone, still wearing the sea green collar Mariah had buckled on that morning. It had her old Oregon phone number engraved in tarnished brass. The woman who found him said he just appeared on her porch in San Luis Obispo, nearly 700 miles south. He refused food at first, slept near the front door, head tilted toward the hills. When the animal control officer scanned his chip and ran the ID, it matched Mariah's registration. And just like that, the world stirred again. Ela hadn't slept since. Now, as the morning thickened into full daylight and a weak fog licked the porch edges, she stood at the screen door and looked down the street. A county vehicle slowed in front of the house. The officer stepped out with careful hands. The back door opened, and Kona, thinner now, his fur dull and ragged, stepped out. He blinked at the sky like he hadn't seen it in weeks. When he saw Ela, something changed. His head lowered, his ears twitched, and his tail gave a single, slow wag. She knelt down. "Hey, baby," she whispered. "Where have you been?" Kona approached, uncertain but not afraid. He smelled like brine and wild air, like windswept places only animals remember. The officer cleared his throat. "He led us somewhere. A place in the hills. I think you should see it." The words fell into place slowly. Kona had come back. but not from nowhere. From somewhere. A place no map could name. A place Mariah might have been. Hila stood, every nerve awake. The dog sat at her heel, watching the road like he was waiting for someone else to follow. And in that moment, she knew the story wasn't over, not yet. Kona didn't bark. Not when the van stopped, not when the strangers approached, not when the familiar scent of home hit him in waves. He just stood by the door of the county vehicle, tail low, eyes fixed on something only he could see, something far away from Isla Street, from the pale stucco houses and trimmed hedges and sprinkler hiss of the suburbs. The deputy's name was Ethan Rios, late 30s, lean, with a face that looked like it spent more time in sun than sleep. He offered his badge as though it mattered, then gestured toward the dog with a quiet, almost reverent tone. We followed him, out past Diablo Ridge. He wouldn't go until dark, waited until everything was still. Hila looked down at Kona. Again, his ribs showed through his coat. He didn't flinch when she reached to scratch behind his ears. Followed him where? She asked. Ethan hesitated. An old water management site, off the grid. Place hasn't been active since the 80s. Far as I can tell, locked up. Posted warnings. No vehicle access anymore. And he led you there, straight to it. Why the deputy exhaled through his nose, jaw clenched slightly. He shifted his weight. There's something buried there. They left before noon. Hila didn't call anyone. She left a note for her neighbor to check on Murphy, locked the gate behind her, and climbed into Ethan's truck with Kona in the back seat. Wrapped in a blanket and chewing on nothing, the drive south twisted through narrowing roads and oak hills. Cattle fences sagged with age. Barns blinked by like ghosts. As they climbed into the foothills, Ethan finally broke the silence. We found him about 5 miles east of town. Woman said he was just sitting in her orchard. Wouldn't let anyone near, except her teenage son. He was always good with kids, Hila murmured. Smart dog, Ethan said. Too smart. She looked over. You sound like you've seen something. I've been a deputy 15 years, he said. You pick up on patterns. Animals that bolt when they're scared, ones that return to trauma. But this was different. He didn't just wander, he led. Kona shifted in the back seat, curling tighter. His eyes didn't close, but they were heavy, somewhere between dream and memory. You say there's something buried? Hila asked quietly. Ethan's grip tightened on the wheel. I'm not going to pretend we know what it is yet. We haven't dug. Didn't want to touch anything without the proper teams. But what? The ground there's wrong. The turnoff was unmarked. Just a chain looped through 2 rusted posts and a faded sign warning of federal property. No trespass. They hiked in the last mile. Isla's boots crunched on gravel overgrown with moss. The wind carried the scent of dry sage and metal. Eventually, the trail gave way to concrete. A cracked service road wound down toward a large, rectangular basin, maybe 60 feet across, lined with old chain-link fencing and shattered floodlights. At the far end stood a concrete structure, no larger than a garage, cinder block, no windows, one thick metal door, partially open and rusted at the hinge. Kona stood at the threshold, tail rigid. He brought us here, Ethan said, stepping carefully beside her. Sat right there at the door, wouldn't go in. But he didn't bark, didn't growl, just waited. Hila stepped closer. The concrete around the entrance was marked, faint lines, like something had clawed or scraped or dragged along the threshold. Not recent, but not old either. She knelt and touched the ground. Cool, dry, but a hollow sounding beneath. Did you go inside? She asked. Not far, Ethan said. Didn't feel right. Just the entrance chamber, some broken shelves, mildew, rusted tools. Then a metal hatch in the floor, a hatch. He nodded slowly, with locks on the inside. They entered with Kona behind them, though he wouldn't cross the threshold at first. Hila coaxed him gently. He whined once, then followed. Inside, it was dark and damp. The walls were lined with pipes and cracked tile. The air smelled like wet copper and rot. Ethan led the way, flashlight beam bobbing across the floor. The chamber narrowed quickly into a smaller room, maybe 10 feet square. In the center was a hatch set into the concrete, reinforced metal with recessed handles, and 2 heavy bolts. The words stenciled on the surface had nearly worn away, but Hila could still make out one phrase: emergency entry, do not unseal. Crouched beside it, fingertips grazing the cold seam. You think she's down there? I don't know, Ethan said, but he led us here for a reason. There was silence between them, a thick, charged stillness. Above, the wind picked up and something loose rattled against the siding. Then Kona made a sound, a low, mournful whine. He stepped forward and placed a paw on the hatch. Just once, and then sat still, watching. They didn't open it that day. Ethan filed a report. The property was flagged for forensic investigation. A team from the county would be dispatched within 72 hours. But that night, Ela lay awake, staring at her ceiling, listening to the soft breath of Kona sleeping by her door, the only witness to something no one yet understood. The next morning, she returned alone. The site was undisturbed, the hatch still sealed, the silence thicker than before. She knelt again. This time, she noticed something she hadn't before, a faint ring of scratched metal around the edge of the hatch, as though it had been opened and closed again recently. She turned her head and looked at the far wall. Someone had written something there, barely visible in the green-tinged mildew, for words, "She's not down here." That afternoon, Ela received a call, not from the sheriff's office, not from the press, from a blocked number. The voice on the other end was low. "Male, calm. You're looking in the wrong direction," he said. The dog came from the west. He wasn't running from something. He was running back. Ela stood frozen, phone against her ear. "Who is this?" "Your sister didn't drown," the voice said. "She was taken, but she didn't stay." The line went dead. And in the silence that followed, Ela finally understood. Kona hadn't returned to lead them to what was buried. He had returned because Mariah was no longer where she'd been, because something, or someone, had let her go, but not before she left behind a message, and maybe something else. The ocean didn't give up secrets easily. It swallowed things, time, memory, people. It wore them down until they dissolved into its tides, unrecognizable. You could scream into its waves and be met with only wind. You could bury a body beneath a mile of water and never be found. But the problem wasn't always what the ocean hid. It was what it sent back. The next morning, Ela drove alone. She left the house before sunrise. Kona asleep in the back of the Jeep, curled into a tight spiral, like a question with no answer. She took the coast road, Highway 1, winding above the cliffs where her sister had vanished. The sea was calm that morning, soft mist rising like breath. She passed the turnout, the one where Mariah's car was found. Same place they'd walked their dogs every Sunday for years. Same spot the sheriff had roped off with yellow tape to. Years ago. There had been nothing suspicious, no signs of struggle, just a leash left behind in the sand, frayed where it had snagged on Driftwood. They said she'd gone swimming, that maybe the tide had pulled her too far. But Ela had always known better. Mariah didn't swim in cold water. She didn't walk barefoot, and she would have never ever left Kona, not unless she was made to. By 7:30 a.m., she was back at the hatch. She parked under a stand of pines and sat in the car for a moment, listening, not to the wind, not to the trees, to something deeper, a hush beneath the noise, the silence you feel in your teeth more than your ears. She didn't call the sheriff. She didn't bring a flashlight. She brought a crowbar. It took 40 minutes to break the bolts. The metal shrieked when it gave, like a scream buried for years. Kona didn't move from the doorway. He stood there, ears forward, but wouldn't enter again. The hatch opened slowly. Below, stairs, steel and narrow, descending into dark. The air that came up smelled old, like wet paper and battery acid. She dropped a rock, counted 7 seconds. Too long. She filmed the descent, not for social media, not for attention. In case something went wrong, in case someone found her phone before they found her. The stairs were rusted but intact. The tunnel below angled slightly downward, reinforced with ribbed steel and thick concrete. The floor was dry, no footprints, but the walls were strange. Scratches. Dozens, long and shallow, as if someone had dragged their fingernails across the surface over and over again. Then words, as some etched, some smeared in old soot. One repeated phrase appeared 3 times. "This is not where they sleep." She followed the corridor left, then right. At the end, a door. Wood, newer than the rest, bolted from the outside. She hesitated, raised the crowbar again. Something shifted behind the door. Not loudly, not violently. A scrape, a breath, like fabric brushing against stone. Isla's heart pounded. She backed up half a step. Then something hit the door. Just once. She ran out, up, into sunlight. Kona met her at the top of the stairs, hackles raised, his eyes fixed on the hatch. She slammed it shut behind her and dropped the crowbar on top. She didn't speak until she was back at the Jeep, keys shaking in her hand. That door had been built recently, reinforced. Someone had been inside. Someone still was. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in her kitchen, porch light off, phone beside her. At 2:14 a.m., It rang again. Blocked number. Same voice, same calm. You opened it. She didn't answer. You saw the scratches? She gripped the phone. Who are you? I was there the night she vanished. Her breath caught. I watched her walk toward the water. I watched them come from the cliffs. Who? A pause, long enough to feel cold. The ones who were buried. The ones the town forgot. You're lying, she whispered. No, I'm just not supposed to be telling you. Where's my sister? Another pause. Not in the hatch. That's just the mouth. They only bring things in there. They take them west when they're done. What does that mean? The voice didn't answer directly. You need to find the tide tunnel, the one below the bluff, where the sandstone splits. The line clicked. Gone. She left again before dawn. Kona rode with her, staring silently out the window as the cliffs passed. Below the bluff, past a collapsed wooden overlook, she found it. A narrow canyon where the sandstone dipped into the sea, like a broken smile. There was a tunnel, half submerged. She stripped to her boots and jacket, clipped a headlamp to her collar, and slipped inside. The water was freezing, rising to her hips. The passage narrowed quickly, then opened into a vaulted cavern. Dry inside. And on the floor, ranged in a loose circle, clothing, shoes, bracelets, all of them weathered. But in the center, perfectly dry, perfectly clean, sat a single item, Mariah's necklace, a small silver disc with a sea glass inlay. Hila had given it to her when she turned 22. She never took it off. Hila reached down, picked it up. It was warm. And then she heard it, a breath, not hers, not Kona's. A slow exhale behind her. She turned. Nothing there. Just the walls. But a new message had been written in the sand behind her. She walked out. But she's not alone. Hila had always been a skeptic. She didn't believe in ghosts, didn't believe in psychics or signs or the universe speaking through coincidences. She believed in evidence, in trauma patterns, in people doing terrible things to other people and calling it nature's fault. But by the time she stood alone inside the sandstone cavern, clutching her sister's necklace, she no longer knew what she believed, because what she felt, cold and real and pulsing in her fingertips, wasn't fear. It was presence. Like the air itself was aware of her. She backed out slowly, keeping her eyes on the walls. No more messages appeared, no breath behind her, just the steady drip of seawater, echoing like a metronome through the tunnel. Kona waited at the mouth, ears low, tail unmoving. He hadn't barked once since they arrived at the coast. As she climbed out, the wind hit hard, but her hands were still warm. The necklace burned slightly against her skin. She didn't pocket it. She wore it. Back in her jeep, Hila wiped the fog off her windshield and stared at the ocean. She hadn't told anyone about the phone calls, or the tunnel, or the scratches on the wall, because she knew how it would sound. But now there were things, physical, tangible things, that didn't make sense. The necklace, pristine and dry in a chamber where nothing should stay clean. The message in the sand, freshly drawn with no footprints. The hatch, sealed from the outside. And most of all, Kona, still alive, still healthy, but not the same. Not even close. That afternoon, she drove him to a veterinary neurologist just north of San Luis Obispo. Dr. Trina Malik had worked with trauma response dogs for FEMA and had reviewed hundreds of cases involving extreme behavior change. She examined Kona for over an hour, full neuro, reflexes, CT scan. Her verdict was cautious but clear. There's no physical trauma, no brain lesion, no neurological reason for the sudden behavioral shift. Then what? Hila asked. Dr. Malik hesitated. There are cases, very rare, where dogs exhibit PTSD-like symptoms after prolonged stress or isolation, but even those dogs don't usually fixate like this. Fixate, the staring, the stillness, his vitals spike every time you mention the hatch, even though it's a neutral word to him. That's not learned, that's conditioned. Something happened to him, something he couldn't run from. Hila drove home with the windows down, hoping the salt air might clear her head. It didn't. Kona whimpered once as they passed the coastal turnout, then went quiet again. At 3:42 a.m., the phone rang. Blocked number. No voice this time, just static, then a distant, wet dragging sound, like something being pulled across a stone floor, followed by a whisper, "She's not alone." The line went dead. The next morning, Hila did something she swore she wouldn't. She called Mariah's ex. His name was Tyler Reese, freelance photographer, last person to talk to Mariah before she vanished outside of Hila. They'd split months earlier, but he'd helped coordinate the first week of search efforts. He answered on the second ring. "Hila, I need to talk," he sighed. "I've been waiting for this call. They met at a diner inland, neutral ground, public, bright. Tyler looked thinner, older. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, printed screenshots of online forums, satellite maps, blurry photos of cliff structures, and something else. A still from a drone video, dated 10 days before Mariah vanished. You never showed this to police. They wouldn't have believed it. The image showed a portion of coastline near the hatch, low tide, exposed rock shelf, and what looked like footprints in the tidal mud. But not human, not animal. Long, spindly, dragged. They disappear into the cliff, he said. Like something went inside. He nodded. I found others, some older, some washed out. I tried tracing them, but there's no cave listed on any map. That whole section was sealed off by the Parks Department in 1981. Landslide, apparently. Did you go down? Tyler shook his head. I got within 50 feet. Kona was with me. He stopped, wouldn't move. That night, Hila sat in her garage, reviewing every photo Tyler had given her. She overlaid his drone footage with geological surveys. Something didn't match. The cliffside where the prints led, it was listed as solid basalt, no natural cave formations, no known entrances. But the rock had clearly been cut. She loaded Kona into the Jeep again. It was time to go back. They reached the turnout just before dusk. Wind sharp, sky overcast. Kona paced the back seat, then stopped, still, waiting. Hila carried a lantern this time, and a GoPro clip to her vest. She followed the bluff path west, toward the tide tunnel, but stopped short at the new place Tyler had shown her. A collapsed section of the cliffside, mostly hidden by brambles and undergrowth. She pushed through, and found it, a narrow crevice, shaped like a distorted eye, leading down into rock, half filled with sand, as if someone had tried to bury it. She dropped to her knees, dug. 5 minutes in, her fingers hit steel, a door, horizontal hinged, padlocked. Just like the hatch. Except this one had no bolts, just a rusted keyhole, and a handprint stained in salt. Kona growled. Hila turned. The sky behind her was dimming fast. She should have left. Instead, she whispered, Mariah? A sound echoed up from the door, a low knock, 3 times. Then silence. Hila didn't move. The knock had been real, not imagined, not wind, not shifting metal. 3 sharp raps, as if someone were on the other side of the steel hatch, waiting for her. Kona didn't bark. He just stared, his ears back, breath shallow. She reached for the rusted keyhole, brushing away a layer of wet sand. Her fingers trembled. She wasn't sure what she was expecting. Maybe a smooth surface, a handle, or even some give in the metal. But the hatch was warm, not ambient warm from the sun. Radiant warm. From within. Back in her Jeep, she recorded everything she could remember. The sound, the temperature, the strange way the coastal air around the hatch felt still, dead, like the wind refused to pass over that exact spot. She didn't sleep that night. And when she finally did drift off just before sunrise, she dreamed of water, not waves or drowning, but of something deeper, ancient, watching, the kind of dream that leaves salt behind your ears when you wake. She called a locksmith the next morning, told him she'd found an old storage hatch on her property near the cliffs, needed it opened. He hesitated, but agreed to meet her that afternoon. She didn't tell him about the knocked-out or the fact that her sister had vanished 2 years earlier within a quarter-mile of that same site. Some truths were too heavy to explain. The locksmith's name was Raoul, mid-60s, quiet, careful. He carried his tools like he'd been doing it his whole life. When they reached the hatch, he frowned. This isn't standard military. It's older, Cold War maybe. Could be a storm shelter. Can you open it? Maybe. But I'm not supposed to touch anything federal. It's not federal. Isla's voice cracked. It's personal. Raoul studied her for a moment, then nodded once. It took him 20 minutes. The lock fought hard, rusted, fused in place. But eventually, the mechanism gave a soft click. Raoul stepped back. You sure you want to do this alone? Hila nodded. He handed her a crowbar. Just in case the hinges stick. She waited until he was out of sight. Then she pulled the hatch open. It moved easier than she expected, not heavy, but balanced, almost as if someone had oiled the hinges recently. Beneath it, a metal staircase descending into darkness. Kona whined once, pawing at her leg. She turned on her headlamp, clipped the GoPro to her jacket, took 1 step down, then another, and disappeared into the cold. The air changed after the 3rd step, thicker, recycled, like an old submarine. By the 10th step, the light above had vanished. She counted each step under her breath. 72 in total. At the bottom, A narrow corridor with concrete walls, pipes running along the ceiling, and old rusted wiring. No markings, no sound, except the faint hum of something electric. Still powered, she moved slowly, following the corridor, until it opened into a chamber, about 15 feet wide, with low ceilings and an old observation window sealed with fogged glass. The room had a control panel covered in dust, knobs, switches, most broken, but one light was green, a single switch labeled ventilation A. She flipped it. Nothing happened. Then, behind the glass, something flickered. Hila moved closer, wiped the fog away with her sleeve, and saw movement inside. Something pale, thin, pressed against the far wall like it had been hiding. She couldn't make out a face, just a shape, and then it turned. She stepped back. The lights inside the chamber snapped on, and for a second, just a second, she saw her. Mariah. Hair longer, face thinner, clothes rotted, but eyes wide open and staring straight at Hila. Then, the lights cut out, and the chamber went dark. Hila slammed her hand against the glass. Mariah. Nothing. She fumbled for her phone, flicked on the flashlight, tried the intercom panel. Dead. Then, a scraping sound behind her. She turned, fast back in the corridor. Something had shifted. The hatch. It was closing. She ran, boots slamming metal, hard in her throat. The stairs were gone, submerged now in seawater. Tide had come in, but faster than it should have. Too fast. She backed away, turned, ran the other direction deeper. The corridor split into 3 branches, one sealed by a rusted gate. One collapsed, and one open, marked by a faded stencil. Subsection E, recovery indication followed it. The walls began to curve inward. The pipes here were newer, less rust, as if someone had maintained this section. At the end, a steel door, and a keypad. She tried random numbers. Nothing. Then tried the date. Mariah disappeared. Nothing. Then Mariah's birthday. The door clicked. Inside, another chamber, smaller, lit by a single yellow bulb hanging from exposed wires, and in the center, a chair, bolted to the floor, straps, dried blood, and a pair of women's shoes. Hila's breath caught. They were Mariah's. She reached out and froze. From the far wall, something unfolded, not walked, not stepped. Unfolded. It looked almost human, but too long. Too pale. No eyes, just wet skin, stretched and moving with the sound of breath, or mimicked breath. It reached for the shoes and whispered in Mariah's voice. She never left. The whisper wasn't loud. It was delicate, wrong, like a recording playing through old, torn speaker wire, like something trying to sound human and almost getting it right. She never left. Hila couldn't move. Her limbs felt locked, not with fear exactly, but with some instinctual refusal, a deep, animal resistance her body understood even if her mind did not. The thing in front of her tilted its head, slowly, studying her, not blinking, not breathing. Then it stepped back, into the shadows, and vanished. No footsteps, no sound, just gone. Hila backed out of the chamber. She didn't scream, didn't run. She withdrew, like her presence had been a mistake and she was trying not to make another one. Back through the door, down the corridor, past the branching hall, until she found the spot where the salt water had risen earlier. It had receded. The stairwell was visible again, and the hatch above was still open. She scrambled upward, boots slipping, lungs burning. Kona was waiting at the top. He barked once, short, urgent, then turned and bolted toward the cliffs. She didn't follow him right away. Instead, Hila stood in the fading light, gulping air and trying to decide if she'd just hallucinated all of it. But her GoPro was still recording, and when she played the footage back, there was something there, not a full image, not a clear face, but motion. Something tall and pale moving in a pattern not quite human, and the voice, not hers, not an echo. The GoPro caught it, clear as a bell. She never left. The next day, Hila drove to a library 2 towns over. Old newspaper microfiche, geological records. She needed to know what was beneath the cliffs, not just topographical data, but forgotten infrastructure, sewer expansions, military easements, anything that might explain the underground structure she'd found. She wasn't ready to go to the police. She wasn't ready to be dismissed again. In a local zoning archive from 1968, she found it, a decommissioned Cold War era listening post built under a false name, Maritime Emergency Communications Center. The document showed blueprints, a small hatch, a series of corridors, and something called Chamber E. No photos, no exit tunnels, just a small scribbled note in the margin. Facility sealed per naval protocol. July 1979. Biological compromise suspected. No recovery authorized. Biological compromise. Ela read the phrase over and over again. She didn't know what it meant, but she knew whoever wrote it didn't intend to go back in. And yet Mariah had been there, alive or something close to it. 2 years after she vanished on the beach. Ela wasn't done. That night, she waited until low tide, returned to the hatch. This time, she brought two things she hadn't before, a second flashlight and a voice recorder. She descended the stairwell again, counting the steps, 72. Same as before, but the air was cooler now, still recycled, still stale, but different. She turned on the recorder, spoke softly. August 4th, 1:22 a.m. Re-entering listening post E. Objective is to return to Chamber E, confirm sightings, and retrieve evidence. The corridor was silent, lights still dead, no sound except her boots. She reached the branching hallway and stopped. This time, the rusted gate on the left side was open. It hadn't been before. Ela hesitated, then entered. The tunnel beyond was narrower, sloped downward slightly, every dozen feet. Red indicator lights blinked from the walls. Still functional, still powered. She whispered to the recorder. Red lights now active in East Corridor. Unknown power source, no sign of decay. At the end of the hallway was a door without a handle, just a panel beside it, a keypad. No numbers, just symbols, waveforms. Maybe she pressed one. Nothing. Then she heard it. From the other side of the door. Breathing. Slow, measured, but not hers. And then a voice, faint, shaky. Help, please, Mariah. Ela stepped back. The voice repeated, louder. Help me. She tried the keypad again. Random combinations. Nothing. Then the voice changed. Ella. A direct address. The inflection was strange, like the word had been learned, not felt. She leaned close to the panel. What are you? She whispered. Silence. Then, almost conversationally, hungry, she backed away. But the hallway behind her was gone. Not blocked, not collapsed, just replaced. Where the tunnel should have been, there was now an open room, flooded ankle deep in brackish water, wires floating, lights flickering under the surface like dying fireflies. And in the center, a chair, same as before, but this time, it was occupied. Mariah. Hair matted, face pale, but unmistakably her. Ela ran forward. Mariah, it's me. The figure in the chair raised its head and smiled, but it wasn't Mariah's smile, too wide, too even, like someone sculpting a mouth from memory. Then the skin began to shift, unravel, as if it were wearing her sister. Ela screamed, turned, ran back toward the keypad door. The breathing had stopped, the light was dead. She slammed on the panel again. This time, it opened. Inside, a staircase descending even deeper. No lights, only sound, wet clicking, like barnacles being cracked open one by one, and a smell, rotten, salt, like something that had never left the ocean. Ela turned off the recorder. No one would believe this, not without proof. She had to get something, a sample, a photo, anything. She descended. The sound got louder, the clicking, and another sound. Beneath it. Singing. Low, wordless, the melody of something older than grief, older than language. She reached the bottom step and stopped breathing. Laid out before her was a cavern, natural stone. Seaweed hung from the ceiling, pools of bioluminescent water glowing blue. And in the center, bodies, floating upright. Dozens. All still. All dressed in clothing from decades ago. Divers, soldiers. And in the very center, suspended by wires like a puppet, Mariah, eyes open, mouth closed, alive. Then her eyes flicked toward Ela. And she whispered, it's inside me. Ela stepped forward, one boot sinking into the slick algae-covered stone. The cavern's echo swallowed the sound round her. The floating bodies barely moved, just a gentle sway like seaweed, caught in a tide pool. Their eyes were closed, their limbs stiff, all except Mariah. Mariah stared at her. Not blinking. Not breathing, just watching. It's inside me, she said again, softer this time. The words barely rippled the silence. Ela couldn't move. Her heart was thudding too fast, like it was trying to outpace her thoughts. There were too many questions, none of them forming properly. She didn't know what she was looking at. Her sister, suspended like a mannequin, looked as if she hadn't aged a day. Pale, yes, thin, but unmistakably the same girl who'd vanished 2 years earlier on that beach. The same girl they'd buried a cenotaph for. Mariah. Ila's voice cracked. Is it really you? Mariah blinked once. Her head tilted slightly to the left, but the rest of her body didn't move. Then she whispered, you shouldn't have come here. The chamber vibrated so subtly Ela almost didn't notice, But then a filament of water ran down the far wall, faster than it should have, pooling at the edge of her boot. Behind her, a soft noise started up. Not the clicking from earlier, not the whisper of waves, a hum. It resonated deep, below hearing, the kind of sound that moved in the bones, not the ears, like a generator coming online or a warning. Mariah, Hila said again, stepping closer. I can get you out. No, Mariah said. Her voice was steadier now, stronger. You don't understand. Then help me, Hila pleaded. Explain. Tell me what happened. There was a long silence. Then I never left. The light in the cavern began to shift, not brighter, just changed. The blue bioluminescent pools turned green, then reddish gold, then pulsed once, fading back to blue, like a cycle, a signal. Mariah's eyes flicked upward toward the ceiling of the cave, then back to Hila. There was a voice, she said. It called me into the water. Hila stared, barely breathing. It wasn't in words, Mariah continued. It was under words, like a melody you don't remember learning, but already know. You followed it into the sea, Mariah nodded, and it brought me here. Hila took another step closer, avoiding the glowing puddles. Why? What is this place? But Mariah shook her head. It's not a place, it's a gate, too. What? Mariah's mouth trembled, to everything that shouldn't be. The humming grew louder. Behind her, one of the floating bodies twitched. Hila spun around, flashlight swinging. The beam caught a figure, male, military uniform from the 70s, eyes open. Then he spoke. I came in 1979. Sealed the door behind me. Didn't matter, his mouth never moved. The voice just arrived. Another figure stirred, a woman in a wetsuit. We all heard it, but only some answered, then another, and another. Until the cavern was alive with murmurs, dozens of voices, soft, layered, not in unison, but converging. They weren't dead, not quite, they were held. Hila backed toward Mariah, panic rising in her throat. Why are they speaking? She whispered. They're trying to warn you, Mariah said, eyes locked on the ceiling. But they don't know how anymore. Language breaks down here. It unthreads. Then we have to go, Hila said. Now, before, you can't. Take me, Mariah interrupted. I'm not fully me anymore. What does that mean? It means the thing that called me. She paused, swallowing hard. It stayed. It's inside. I hear it all the time now, in my blood, in the pressure behind my eyes. It's using me like a shell, and it's waiting. For what? For you. The humming stopped. So did the voices for a full 5 seconds. There was silence in the cavern. Then something moved in the water. Not in the pools but in the walls. The stone rippled, like muscle under skin. A low groan echoed from the far end of the chamber, and a voice like 1,000 voices crushed into one spoke a single word. Open. Mariah convulsed. Her back arched. The wires holding her snapped. She didn't fall. She floated, suspended inches above the ground. Her mouth opened, a sound, not a scream, not a song, poured out. Pure vibration. The bodies in the water all turned, eyes glowing faintly, toward Hila. She ran, didn't look back, didn't stop. The corridor was shifting around her, walls growing damp, metal corroding in real time. Lights flared and died. Doors slammed open. One slammed shut. She barely made it to the stairwell. Kona barked from above. Frantic. She climbed. Hands slipping, boots soaked. Just as she reached the hatch, a wind burst upward from the tunnel behind. Her wet and metallic and full of whispers. She slammed the hatch shut. The bolt clicked. Then silence. Back in her jeep, Hila sat in the driver's seat, shaking. Kona rested his head on her lap, tail thumping once. She clutched the GoPro like a lifeline. She had the footage. She had audio. She had something no one could explain. But none of it mattered more than what Mariah had said. It was waiting. And now, it knew she existed. Over the next few weeks, Hila went quiet. No videos. No calls. She archived the footage on a private server, wrote down everything she could remember, sketched diagrams, documented what she saw in the cave down to the last glowing pool. But the dreams came anyway, and the song. Not every night. Just enough. Low, insistent, beneath the noise of the world, beneath her own thoughts, a melody she didn't remember learning, but already knew. On the morning of September 14th, Hila walked to the beach. She brought Kona. She brought the GoPro. She left her phone behind. And her Jeep keys. At the waterline, she paused, looked out at the ocean. At the horizon. At the place her sister vanished. And then, slowly, she walked in. Kona barked once, then followed. She didn't come back. Not that day. Not the next. The Coast Guard searched. Again. For 2 days. Nothing. On the third day, the dog returned. Alone. Collar gone, eyes rimmed red, but otherwise fine. He walked up to Isla's jeep and sat waiting back. In the cliffside chamber, something shifted. The bodies floated one less than before. The pool pulsed gold, and the gate remained open. The sky over Driftwood Cove bled pale pink when Deputy Travis Clay arrived at the beach parking lot. A fisherman had called it and said there was a dog sitting beside an abandoned jeep, just past sunrise, quiet, not barking, just watching the waves. Clay knew the car. Everyone in this part of Florida did. It was Isla cars. Same salt-scoured bumper stickers, same rusted roof rack, same left rear taillight cracked like a spider web. Never repaired. He cut the engine and stepped out. The early September heat already pushing through his uniform. The dog didn't move, just raised his head as Clay approached. "Kona," Clay said softly. The shepherd mix wagged his tail once, but his eyes were wrong, like he was listening for something far away. Clay crouched and opened the back door of the jeep. No phone, no bag, no camera, just a manila folder in the passenger seat curled at the edges, salt damp and worn. On the cover, 3 words, written in black marker. "Do not share." He opened it. Inside were photos, notes, sketches, a crude map of the coastline, marked with coordinates, a sequence of stills from a GoPro granny, low-light shots of a cave, and one image that made Clay's blood run cold. Mariah Carr, 2 years vanished, staring directly into the lens. Alive. Or something that looked like it. There were pages and pages of handwritten accounts, full of terms Clay didn't understand. Resonant frequency breach, pressure veil, non-biological intelligence signature. And always the same place circled, a stretch of cliff just south of where Mariah had disappeared. Clay closed the folder and looked out at the sea. It felt like it was looking back. 3 days later, the Coast Guard mounted a limited search. The official report described the effort as a routine marine welfare check, related to an overdue local. Unofficially, Clay had shown the folder to Commander Retz at Station St. Augustine, under the table. No one in his department would touch it. Too weird, too risky, no clear jurisdiction. But Retz had a background in sonar surveillance, and he recognized something in one of Isla's notes, a frequency notation. An ultra-low resonance tone that shouldn't have been present on a handheld GoPro mic, especially not underwater. "Sonar ghosting," Retz muttered, "or something mimicking it." He launched a side sweep using unmarked craft. They pinged something off the coast, not a cave, not a wreck, something metallic. Beneath 100 feet of water and sand, something the size of a small house. This sent to divers. Only one came back. The survivor, L.T. Jensen, was airlifted to Jacksonville in a state of near catatonia. He refused to speak for 72 hours. When he finally did, he asked one question. "Do any of you hear the music?" Meanwhile, Kona refused to leave the jeep. Animal control tried, twice. He snapped at the second officer, then ran back to the beach, curling up in the exact spot Isla had last been seen. Locals started leaving food beside him, then candles. Then letters. A rumor began to spread, kids on TikTok mostly, that the Carr sisters were part of some ocean door cult, that the footage was faked, that the military had blocked access to the cliffside trail for coastal erosion. But locals saw unmarked black SUVs parked there at dusk. Theories multiplied. But Clay wasn't buying any of it, because one night, 2 weeks after the dog returned, he started dreaming in a language he didn't know. It wasn't words. It was rhythm, cadence, a pattern repeating under his breath. He'd wake sweating, heart hammering, thinking of dark water and open stone doors. He stopped sleeping, started researching, and, finally, one morning before dawn, he hiked the restricted path himself, just to see, just to settle the quiet wrongness that had followed him since the jeep turned up. He brought no radio. No gun, just the folder. The cliff edge was as he remembered it, crumbling limestone, scrub brush leaning toward the sea, salt-heavy air. He almost turned back, but then Kona appeared at his side. No leash, no sound, just looking at him. And waiting. Clay stepped forward. And the ground beneath him changed. It didn't fall away. It just softened, became something not quite solid, like stepping through a memory. He stumbled once, felt the cliff vanish, and then dash darkness. Stone. And breath, not his. The chamber wasn't like Isla described. It was bigger now, walls curved outward like a cathedral built inside a whale's ribcage, and in the center, a ring of water. Still. Dark. Blacker than anything above could be. Kona stopped at the edge. Clay stepped forward and looked in, and saw not his reflection, but her. Mariah Carr, standing in the water. Arms at her sides, not blinking, not smiling. Just watching. And then he was falling. When he came to, it was light outside, afternoon. Maybe. He was back on the cliff. Dry. Alone. No sign of the cave. No sign of Kona. The folder was gone. But in his hand was a single page. Soaked. Scrawled. In Isla's handwriting. It said, "The door is open. It doesn't close anymore. And I think I brought something back." Clay left the force that same week. Moved inland. Changed his name. Tried to forget. But the dreams never stopped, and every so often, he'd wake with wet sand under his nails. 6 months later, a Florida State Geological team detected strange subsurface vibrations near the coast. Deep harmonic frequencies, pulsing in patterns that didn't match seismic activity. They recorded them, ran them through audio software, tried speeding them up. Tried reversing them. And when they played the final cleaned file, one of the researchers, a mother of 2, froze in her chair and said, "That's a lullaby my sister used to sing to me." Except she hadn't spoken to her sister in over 20 years, because her sister vanished off that very beach in 2003, while walking her dog. A week after the audio file surfaced, it leaked. It wasn't meant to, but someone on the geological team, maybe frightened by what they'd heard, sent a copy to a private Reddit group for anomalous sound phenomena. From there, it spiraled, reposted, remixed, debated in threads that disappeared as quickly as they were created. By the time the original post was scrubbed, thousands had downloaded it. Some claimed it triggered sleepwalking. Others said it caused migraines, hallucinations, vivid dreams. One listener in Tampa reported that her dog, a husky mix named Belle, began growling at her speakers the moment the audio reached the 4th harmonic pulse, and then stopped eating. 3 days later, Belle disappeared through the doggy door in the middle of the night. The door was locked from the inside. Marissa Ewing found out about the leak through her niece. One of those "you should see this, but maybe not" texts. She didn't listen to it at first, didn't want to, but curiosity, or dread, got the better of her. She downloaded the file onto a flash drive, plugged it into her laptop, and put on headphones. She played it twice, once in real time, once slowed down. The first listen gave her goosebumps, the second made her cry. She didn't know why. There were no words in it, no voice. Just tones, low and distant, like whale song buried under cathedral echoes. But halfway through, something in her memory recognized it, something she hadn't thought about in 2 years. A moment from the day Mariah vanished. They were walking back from the marina. Kona was off leash. Mariah was humming, not a full melody, just a string of notes, a rhythm, almost like she was following it, not making it. Marissa had joked, "What is that? You've been humming it all day." Mariah shrugged. "Just a thing I heard in the water yesterday. It gets stuck in your head." At the time, Marissa hadn't thought anything of it, but now, 2 years later, the tones from the geological recording matched exactly. Mariah had been humming a sound no one had captured. Not until the coast registered it 2 years after she vanished. Marissa packed a bag that night, notebooks, maps, Isla's journal, and an old GoPro they'd recovered from a gear locker she'd used for her kayak tours. She drove south before dawn. Didn't tell anyone, not even Clay. She knew if she hesitated, she'd lose her nerve. This wasn't a rescue anymore. It wasn't even a search. It was something else now. Something she had to see or hear for herself. The cliffs were cordoned off, metal fencing, concrete barriers, signs that said restricted, shoreline, geological risk. But no guards. No patrols. It was performative, a warning for tourists, not a real barricade. Marissa parked in the dunes and hiked the long way in. Avoiding the old footpaths, she moved low, careful, brought no phone, no GPS. Just the GoPro strapped to her chest and a thermos of water. By the time she reached the cliff edge, the sky had darkened into overcast silence. No wind, no gulls. She waited. Nothing. No doorway, no cave, just a wall of pale limestone. She sat down. Listened. Tried humming the pattern again, the rhythm from the file. From Mariah's humming that day. 3 low tones, 1 high. Again. And then the wind stopped completely. It didn't feel like a gust had passed. It felt like everything had paused, even the sound of her own breath, like the air had gone heavy. And then the stone shimmered, not dramatically, not like a movie. It was subtle, like a heat mirage. Like the light was bending wrong, just for a second. And then she saw it, the arch, the place Ela had described in her notes. A door, but not a door. Cut not into the cliff but through it, as if the stone remembered a shape, and had allowed it to return. She stepped forward. And the ground led her. Inside, the cave was silent. But it was also alive with sound, not noise, not echoes, but resonance, like the walls were humming just beneath perception. She turned on the GoPro. The red light blinked. She walked. The air grew colder. The walls changed. At first, limestone, familiar. Then deeper, smoother, like something had bored through it, not carved, melted. She smelled salt and stone, and something else. Something like ozone. The chamber appeared suddenly. No transition. One step and she was inside a massive vault, domed and circular, lit only by bioluminescent streaks along the ceiling. The water pool was there, perfect, still, and, at its edge, a shape. Human. Kneeling. Back turned. Marissa stopped breathing. Then whispered, "Mariah?" The figure turned slowly, and it was her, but it wasn't, not fully. Mariah's face, Mariah's eyes, but wrong in tiny ways, the pupils just too wide, the skin too flawless, the mouth too still, as if her sister had been remembered by something that didn't quite understand what a human was. "Marissa," the figure said. Voice flat, no breath behind it, not a question, a statement, like a greeting. Like a cue. Marissa stepped back. The figure stood. It took one step toward her. Another. No aggression, just closeness. And then, softly, "The sea remembers what we forget, and it keeps what we bury." Marissa shook her head. "You're not her." "No," it said, "but I was." The GoPro recorded none of what came next, just static, then black, then one final frame, a still image before the battery died, a single hand pressed against stone, fingers splayed, water dripping. 3 days later, Clay received a package at his new address in Ocala. No return label. Inside, the GoPro, and Marissa's notebook. The last entry was dated the day she disappeared. It read, "I found her, but I think we were both too late. This place doesn't want us. It wants to be remembered." Clay Ewing didn't cry when he watched the footage. Not the first time, not the second. He sat in the dark, laptop balanced on a folding chair in the garage, the video looping every 2 minutes. Marissa's boots moving down a tight corridor of rock, her breath steady, the low hum growing louder. And then static, one final frame. A hand pressed against stone. Water trailing down. Then nothing. No exit. No sign she'd turned around. No evidence of distress, just a disappearance. Same as before, same as Mariah. But this time, he couldn't tell himself it was an accident, a riptide, an unstable cliff. This time, someone had returned the camera. Someone wanted it seen. He spent the next 2 weeks trying to find where the package had come from. He tracked postal barcodes, ran the envelope's adhesive for touch DNA, even consulted with a friend in private investigations, who used a black market address triangulation system. Nothing came back. The package had been dropped into the sorting center. Not mailed. Left, like a message. Clay called in sick. Then stopped calling. He took out an old storage bin from the attic, the one with Mariah's last beach photo, printed large and grainy, from a newspaper clipping no longer online. He tacked it to the garage wall. Then below it, the still frame from the GoPro, Marissa's hand. Then below that, Isla's final sketch, the one she'd drawn in red ballpoint, a ring of arches, a chamber that wasn't made for air-breathing life. He pinned them all to the corkboard, side by side. There were patterns, but not the kind that mapped cleanly. They weren't geographic. They were auditory. Rhythmic. Tonal. Like sonar signatures, or forgotten songs. And always, they were tied to places along the Gulf Coast, where the limestone met something deeper, something that shouldn't have been geologically possible. Something older. Clay began having the dreams 2 days after the GoPro arrived, not nightmares, not visions. Just the hum. Low, steady, familiar, like a note he couldn't hum, but could feel in his teeth. He started sleeping less. Then not at all. Then he heard it while awake. It came through the floorboards, through the pipes. Once, through the walls of his car, while idling in the Publix parking lot. He knew it wasn't real, or at least not measurable, but that didn't mean it wasn't happening. Because every time he heard it, that specific frequency, he would remember something he hadn't thought about in years. A beach, a tide going out. Mariah standing waist deep, not calling to him, but listening, like someone was calling to her. He drove south, didn't pack much, just the notebook, a flashlight, and a recording of the tones stitched together from Isla's sketches and Marissa's humming. He played them from his phone as he stood near the restricted bluff. No shimmer. No door. Just stone. He waited. The sun went down. Still nothing. But the sound was different. The wind had a note in it, and the sand at his feet. It wasn't dry. It wasn't wet either. It felt malleable. As if it was waiting for instruction. He walked to the edge of the stone, sat cross-legged, and did nothing. No humming. No calling. No knocking. He just listened, and when the sky turned completely black, the air changed. Not temperature. Density. He felt pressure in his chest, in his ears, and then, faint, a voice. Female. Not Marissa's, not Mariah's, older, and not speaking a language he recognized, but not foreign either. Just wrong, like language that hadn't yet decided what it wanted to be. He didn't go into the chamber, because there wasn't one this time. The wall didn't shimmer. No arch revealed itself, but something passed through anyway, something soundless, a pressure, a shape. And when Clay opened his eyes, it was morning. He was lying face down in the sand, salt in his mouth. His flashlight was gone, but the notebook, Marissa's, had been moved. It was closed, yes, but a new page had been added. Different paper, older, YELLOWED. And on it, a single sentence: she's here, but she's not alone. 3 days later, the coast was hit by a freak undertow event. No weather warnings. No seismic activity. Just a sudden, immense pull, not out to sea, but from beneath a sinkhole open 30 feet offshore. Divers were dispatched. They couldn't reach the bottom. Every sonar pulse sent into it returned unreadable, like the sound had nowhere to reflect from, like it was going somewhere else. The local paper ran a short story about Clay's disappearance. It mentioned his sister, and Mariah, and the theory that he'd taken his own life out of grief. The sheriff quietly disagreed. He told a junior deputy that Clay's car had still been locked, his phone inside, but no footprints led away from it. Just the sand. Undisturbed. Like the ocean had lifted him, or like he'd walked into a place that didn't record memory the way we do. The case is still unsolved. No bodies. No signs of struggle. No final messages. But sometimes, early in the morning, joggers report hearing something from the limestone bluff, a hum, then a voice, then nothing. Dogs refuse to go near it, cameras glitch out. But those who've listened, who've really listened, describe the sound the same way, like someone humming, just behind the wall of the world. What was waiting beneath that cliff wasn't death. It was a doorway, and on the other side of that doorway, something was listening back.